All right. Welcome everyone to our, I don't know what number JBN this is. I haven't been tracking, but we've been doing these now since 2019, and by we I mean Rabbi Wilhelm, myself. I'll introduce our host in a second, but it's been a pleasure working with the rabbi and Andrew Aryeh here on bringing this amazing event to fruition. I will. I'll introduce our speaker in a moment, but first off, I'll introduce myself. My name is Andy Weiss. If we don't know each other already, I broker loans in the $1 to $100 million space here in New York and nationally. And it's obviously a choppy market, but we're getting stuff done. JBN we created originally as a way to connect members of the Chabad Upper East Side community, the young professional community in particular, and I'd say really to also engage other young professionals in the real estate space in New York who could benefit from a group like this. And really the ultimate goal is to help drive business for all the attendees in this room. We look at charitable giving as an important part of the life of a Jewish person, and really any person, I'd say. And the highest form of charity is really helping someone else do business. So we really hope that you guys can transact in this room, and God willing, you can make some money. And we definitely like Chabad. Sometimes I would say I like to chase people down for a kickback for a Chabad, but we could talk. We could talk on a referral fee. What's appropriate. This wouldn't happen without a lot of people. I mentioned Andrew Aryeh over here. We'll come introduce our speaker in a moment. But our hosts are, I'd say, amazing. In here we have Adam Kazaz with Kaber Group, Bobby Shamsian, who's an OG Chabad Upper East Side young professional, who's in acquisitions over at Kushner, Eddie Estes at Ripco, Harry Hockman and his new role at City Urban Realty, and Oliver Schwalbe at Midtown Equities, all doing a tremendous job. And I was telling the rabbi today, I always get a little nervous day of. It takes a lot to get a lot of great people in a room, and so thank you guys very much for all the work you do, and thanks everyone for being here. I would also be remiss if I didn't shout out Nicholas hooking us up over there at the bar. And for those who don't go to shul, Chabad Upper East Side, I'm not saying you should go, but Nicholas has a nice heavy pour on Shabbat, so I'm just saying. He knows how to party.
He also knows how to grill. I remember him from the grilling.
Nicholas is a man of many talents. Again, though, just a huge shout out to the rabbi for just this outstanding community that we're all lucky to be a part of. And last but not least, a special mention. No one's here from Kirkland, but thank you to Kirkland Ellis for this amazing space.
Thank you, Kirkland.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Without further ado, though, I'm gonna ask Mr. Aryeh to come up here and introduce his brother-in-law.
I can do it.
Okay.
I don't know much about him, but I'll do my best. So Sean Lefkovits founded JBN Holdings in 2017. I guess that's 6 years ago. He's responsible for a bunch of deal negotiations that have happened. He raises a lot of dough domestically and internationally, and he oversees the relationship that the company has with all different investors. I think Lance also does a little bit too. So shout out to Lance. Currently, JBN owns and operates 35 different properties in Manhattan and Brooklyn. The buildings altogether are worth somewhere between $300 and $500 million. Sean is an avid golf player and a below-average backgammon player.
Lies. I have Venmo receipts. Lies.
I'd like to see those receipts. Prior to JBN Holdings, Sean was one of the top investment sales brokers here in NYC. How many years did you do that for?
8.
8 years investment sales. Before you got the experience to go to that other side of buying. He's responsible for completing over 150 deals during that time period as an investment sales broker. And when he was, I think, 29, he won an award for 30 under 30 in the Commercial Observer. Sean graduated from Wisconsin and was once quoted in The Real Deal saying how much he loves and looks up to his younger brother-in-law, Andrew. That's it.
Wow,
Pretty good.
that was amazing. Yeah, that's great. That was verbatim, right?
Verbatim is a good intro.
Yeah. All right. Nice, Sean. Thank you for being here, lending your time and your insights.
Of course, thanks for having me. A few people to thank, Andy, obviously. We go back from Marcus, what, like 10 years ago?
No. I
Less?
wasn't in real estate then. I remember when I met you. I met you at the APAC Northeast Gala in Lincoln Center.
I was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You were gone for Marcus by the time I was.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, obviously we have a good relationship though.
Yeah.
Happy to be here, thank you for inviting me. My wife said to be nice to my brother-in-law, so Andrew, thank you for that intro, thank you for having me. Lexi, was that good? Okay. Thank you to Rabbi Yaya for having us, Rabbi Haft, appreciate it, happy to be here, happy to chat. And thank you to everybody for being here, and hopefully I can answer any questions you guys want.
Okay, yeah. Well, I was hoping you could kind of, Andrew alluded to you're starting off in brokerage. How did you kind of find your footing in the real estate world here in New York? What brought you to real estate, and what was your first experience in the business like?
Okay, so in 2008, when I was in Wisconsin, I started getting serious about what's my future, what do I want to be. My grandfather was always an inspiration to me. He was a developer in Spain, developer in New York. He owned some properties in New York. But he was always my inspiration as far as what I wanted to do. I loved his lifestyle, I loved his attitude. So in the back of my mind, I always had real estate as a potential goal and career. And I really looked up to him. And then 2008, I was looking for jobs. I was junior in college, and I needed an internship for when I graduated. And I remember calling my dad. Do you have any ideas what I could do? He goes, your first cousin, Jason Greenblatt, is the right-hand man for Donald Trump. He's his general counsel. He's been with him for 25 years. I could reach out to him. Maybe there's opportunity there. Sure enough, there was. And he's like, you hit me at the right time. If you want, I have a spot for you. Sure enough, I took up that opportunity. It's very hard to pass on that. I show up the first day, and my desk is literally in between my cousin's office and Donald Trump's office, like right outside. So I heard every conversation. I was like, wow, that was an unbelievable experience. I have some wild stories, some funny stories, but regardless, having that on my resume kind of cemented or took me to that next level as far as saying I want to stay in the real estate business. And then 2009 came around when I graduated, and it was during the Lehman crash, the financial crisis. There was no business happening at all in the United States. It was looking bleak. There were no jobs to be had, and I'm just sitting. I remember sitting in my bed in my college room, and I'm just scrolling around every website looking for jobs. I didn't know what to do. I found one ad on Monster.com. I don't even know if that's still around. I found one ad on Monster.com for Marcus and Millichap. The description was, we're looking, it's a top New York City investment sales team looking for 1 to 2 brokers that are hungry, motivated. We've done a ton of transactions. We're willing to teach you, and it's commission only, and the sky's the limit basically in terms of what you could earn, but it's basically an eat what you kill type of opportunity. I said, you know what? Let me apply here. Let me see what it's about. I applied, and it was with Joe Kosum, who actually spoke here probably a few weeks ago, and Peter Vondre, who were 2 of the top multifamily guys in New York City. And I said to myself, you know what? 2009, there were no other jobs. These guys were intrigued about my resume because of the Donald Trump experience. So they said, okay, there's something interesting about this guy, which helped me for that role. So they hired me. And I liked it because I had a couple of years, I would say. For me, it was all about learning. When you're starting out, you just graduated, it's all about what you could absorb, what you could sponge. Because I was very honest with myself. I knew absolutely nothing, like literally zero. All I knew is that I would work hard, I would learn hard, I would push myself. At the time, I was living in Westchester. I commuted on the Metro North train, 6 a.m. every day, stayed late every day. But I wanted to prove myself, and I was a very self-motivated person. I was very into Tony Robbins' book, self-growth and all that. I would work with business coaches. It's just my personality. I never had a salaried job in my career, and I said, okay, the more I learn, the more I put in, hopefully it would benefit me more in my career. So I thought brokerage actually was the right way to go about it. And the other parts of the brokerage too is that I was learning sales skills. And the sales skills, in my opinion, are applicable to anything in your, whatever job you're doing, or just dealing with anybody. Learning how to sell and learning how to communicate with someone and putting yourself in somebody else's shoes is one of the most valuable skills you can do. So learning from two of the top guys in New York City was just, I just knew that it would go places. So that's how I started, and for about 2 years, I think I probably made 1 to 2 deals. I remember sellers on the phone when I was pitching them deals saying like a $3 million deal in Washington Heights that was like 25,000 square feet, great asset. And I had buyers telling me like, this is going to $0, like forget about it, the world's crashing, blah, blah, blah. Finally I sold one, and things were looking a little bit, brighter on that side. But for a couple of years I said, you know what, I'll sacrifice my career, I'll sacrifice my life just to learn, absorb, and hopefully when the market turns, I'm ready for it. And that's what happened. I stuck with these guys for about 7 years. As Andrew noted, we probably did around 150 deals altogether in a 7 or 6 year span, because I left for after 6 years or so. So all that transactional experience just gave me more insight and knowledge into the real estate business, and really helped me grow as an individual, helped me grow my career, and yeah, that's what started me.
Respect. The 6 a.m. Metro North, respect. I was listening to a podcast with Bob Knackle today. Similar story. So
You got to start somewhere, but you really have to push yourself. It's not comfortable, but if you want it, you got to do what you got to do.
Definitely respect that. And I guess you're having all the success at Marcus. You're on like the top producing team. I mean, these guys kill it. They're still killing it. And obviously you're doing your own thing now. But before you went off to do your own thing, you left and you went to an independent brokerage shop to, I guess a different side of brokerage. What would you describe as like the major difference and like the driver in leaving, call it like a really just like famed, successful team?
Good question. So I was in a very comfortable position at the time. I think I was in my mid-20s. I was making a lot of money with Joe and Peter. But like I mentioned before, I was working with business coaches, life coaches, and I'm not looking always in the now and the present. I'm looking at 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 years from now. And I write down my goals as far as where I want to be in my life, and not just business related, but life related, family related. When do I, see myself getting married, and how many kids do I want? When do I want to have kids? Things like that. But it was really a mix of everything. And I think if you can write that down and envision your future, I think that's one of the most important takeaways that I would share with you guys right now. But when I was writing this down, I noticed at a certain point that my 5-year plan did not include me staying at Marcus and being in this umbrella. And it's nothing to do with Marcus. I absolutely loved my time there. I learned a lot. We did a lot. We crushed it. But I wanted more. And there was an opportunity. I joined Ivan Akimian at HPNY, who was doing great at the time. Very transactional. It was more my speed, which is I'm like addicted to the game. I'm addicted to deal making. He allowed that platform. I could deal make in Brooklyn, Manhattan. But the bright side of that, and really why I joined, was that in a way there were no rules, and I was able to, under a corporate umbrella at Marcus, you were very limited to what the corporate, it was a public company, so there was a lot of limitations. With Ivan, he said, listen, if you find a building you want to buy as well, you want to give a direct offer, go for it. And sure enough, that's what I did. I brokered a lot of deals, and I also started buying some deals. And I say that because that was part of my 5 to 10 year business plan, was I wanted to eventually own buildings. That was my dream. I wrote that down all over. It was my vision. So I think I was with Ivan for about 2 years. Did great. We did a lot of deals together, but I also bought probably about 4 or 5 buildings while I was there. And then that spiraled. After I think my 5th building, we bought a building in the East Village. I had a partner, David Lloyd, who was still at Marcus, but also had similar vision as me. And after our 5th building or so, that's when we realized I think it's time to take it to the next level and just focus on the buying.
Wow. Wow. So you guys had been in touch, like, I guess, how did you decide with David, like, you're obviously you knew each other and you had a good relationship, but you guys were just bouncing ideas off and you're like, I'm gonna buy this building, you wanna buy this with me, syndicate it? Like, what was that process like of even the first one? Like, getting over the hump?
Well, yeah. First of all, David and I started essentially in the cubes together in 2009. We learned under Vondere and Kosum. We learned the same team, the same mentality, same brokerage skills. So in a way, we had a similar mentality. If you know David, he has a very different personality than me, which is why it works, because he handles things that I just have no patience for, and vice versa. I handle things that he just has no interest in doing, but it works. But we always had a dream and vision of buying a lot of buildings and growing a company, and we felt comfortable and confident that we can really grow a proper team. And a few of the guys are here. My brother Lance, Ryan, Benedetto are here in the crowd. But we always had a vision for growing a nice big company, tight-knit company, and owning a lot of buildings. And David was on board with it. And joining Ivan allowed me to start that because David wasn't ready to leave Marcus at the time. Yeah, so.
Huh. And what was the process like of you're finding deals and you're starting to run by an equity provider? And I'm asking you because I feel like there's probably other people in the room who may work in acquisitions. They may be brokers, and they're probably thinking to themselves, I want to start doing this too. They may also have this same dream.
Yeah.
Like what was the mechanical part of it of you first found a few deals that you thought were really good and you're like, I'm going to show this to an equity guy that I know. Like how do you go about that process of starting your syndication? Like,
Sure.
what is your anchor for your syndication?
I guess there's 2 parts to that. The first is you just need to dive in and get your feet wet. The first deal is always the hardest deal. You're scared about it. I don't know is this a good deal or not? How do I know I'm going to succeed? The first deal I bought was about $850,000 in Crown Heights, and I bought that with just close friends. And David and I, of course, put in a good amount of money, but it was a starter deal. I didn't take a promote on it. It was just close friends, guys that had trust in me. And it was a massive, massive learning experience. But once you break that barrier and just get your feet wet, that's when things just happen. You start learning about your experiences with contractors or how to deal with financing and who is the right attorney and how to lease out these spaces. But you just have to get your feet wet. And once you get the first deal under your belt, that's when things start to roll. And I encourage everybody here if you're thinking about buying, should I not, should I this? I would start with something small. It doesn't have to be the best deal because, who knows if it's an amazing deal or not. But even if it's a decent deal, just get your feet wet, get started, and then opportunities will arise from that.
Interesting. I want to get to some recent deals and kind of like where you are now. But I'm curious, even on the capital side though, do you find as you've gone on and you have this track record, it becomes easier and it's rinse and repeat? I know you have some programmatic relationships, but does it kind of smooth itself out, or is it always you're always pounding pavement? Like equity is just such a big need and tough need to fill.
Yeah, equity is always a big need. Obviously, you can't close a deal without equity, but I would say the deal comes first. If it's a proper deal, if it's a good deal, and you have a lot of conviction in it, you believe in it, there's always equity out there. And I'm going to say also that I'm tailored towards Manhattan and prime Brooklyn. That's my niche. That's all I focus on. It's what I know. It's what I like to do. So I'm speaking to that market. But in my opinion, there's always equity for these markets if you find the right deal. Ideally, you have relationships going into it and people that have faith in you and trust in you where you can execute on the deal. But if it's a great deal and your investors believe in it, they'll throw money into it. And obviously, the more you build on it, the more you show your experience, your knowledge. Investors will roll with you. People, traded obviously has been very helpful in my career because it, puts me out there. People are reaching out all the time. Will love to invest, yada, yada, yada. But I also have investors that are rolling in from previous deals into the next deal, the next deal, the next deal. And like you mentioned, we have programmatic investing as well. We have institutions that we work with. Thank God we have great relations with them. And really what I also recommend and suggest is I'll turn down a lot of deals that even my investors will say we should buy this. And I turn it down because I don't believe in it. There could be paperwork issues. The finance is an issue. Maybe there's a C of O issue. I just don't think it's the right price. And that honesty goes a long way because they know I'm not doing this just for the sake of doing a deal, but I have everybody's interest in mind. And I'm not looking at this business as a one-year business plan that's buy 20 building. I'm looking at this as in the long run. And I really want to build a proper track record. And I think reputation in this business is everything. People talk, it's a small world. We all know everybody at the end of this day will know each other, but people talk. And my goal is to have a clean reputation where people can trust me, or they know that I'll treat them properly, and we'll always do business.
I respect that. A good name is worth more than its weight in gold. Gotcha. So, in terms of your recent exit, let's say, I'm curious if you could just walk us through what that transaction looked like in life cycle, and I'm also curious to some extent. You're selling in not the best of markets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, objectively, you feel like you got your price? What drove that? Was that the business plan that was supposed to sell at that point, or were rates too high?
Yeah, sure. So you're referencing McDougal Street.
Yeah.
Okay. So McDougal, 103, 105 McDougal Street. I think I saw it on the board over there. Sure,
Pop back up.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the biggest deal that I purchased at the time in my career. It was a $22.5 million deal. It was smack in the middle of COVID. And during that time, I took the mentality of saying, listen, I noticed, I was talking to a lot of friends, business people, everybody was just, during COVID, that's just, we're going to sleep, there's no business happening, nothing's happening, the world's ending, of course, again. And I've been through that before, and I knew New York isn't going anywhere. And I just had that uttermost belief. It could take 1 year, it could take 2 years, it could take 5 years. But at the end of the day, NYU's not going anywhere, Columbia's not going anywhere, the hospitals aren't going anywhere, the Met's not going anywhere. We're talking about the capital of the world. And I would say 95% of the people I was talking to were saying it's the end, but it just made no sense to us. So that was the time that I wanted to strike on anything that seemed reasonable to me or was in a prime location. Mm-hmm. This building, I remember seeing it on the market with Avison Young, I think around $40 million. In my opinion, A+ location right next to NYU, 50-foot wide building, block through. And all of a sudden the price kept coming down and down and down. And I had a very good relationship with one of the brokers on the deal, who then said it was $30 million and less. And then he basically said to me, listen, this seller, it's an estate sale. They just need to sell the property to a proper buyer. There was one other buyer who wanted to buy it. I'm not going to name his name. Experienced guy, but the seller wanted nothing to do with him because of his reputation. And eventually I said, I put my brokerage hat on. The seller was totally insane, impossible to deal with. Every time we had a contract going back, they would add another 100 pages. I'm like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. I just don't see a deal happening. So David and I put our heads together and we said, how can we figure out a way to basically bypass the contract? And we did. We figured out we'll do a same-day contract closing. I did not want to be in a contract with this seller. She was looking for every footfall possible. And that's what we did. I spoke to a couple of my top investors in the deal. They decided to come up with a lot of cash. They had faith in David and I in executing in this. I found a bridge lender who I was very close with, who said, we'll put up the balance of the money, and we closed, we bought it for $22.5 million. The retail was vacant at the time. 75% of the upstairs was vacant at the time. There was zero income, but on a price per foot, it was golden.
What kind of leverage did you get on it?
We got a bridge loan. I think that how much? 70% LTC, right? LTC. So and by the way, it wasn't easy to get a bridge loan at the time also, because it was the middle of COVID. No one knew what was happening. But we had one group that was experienced in the New York City market. They knew the asset, and I guess in their mind they said, you know what? Worst case, we take over the building at our basis. I'm like, good luck to you, but yeah, listen. Hopefully it's a win-win for both. It was just a crazy deal. Sorry, I remember like Lance, for example. We were doing our due diligence, and we had to wear masks. And I sent in Lance, poor Lance. I sent in Lance to go into the seller's leasing office. My L&T attorney refused to go in at the time. She was like, COVID, this and that. Lance took one for the team, put on his mask, his gloves, latex gloves, all that. And he's FaceTiming with my L&T attorney, Christina Smith. Like, hey, how does this lease look? How does this lease look? In the end of the day, we took a chance on it. The paperwork turned out to be solid. It actually turned out to be much better. We got a little lucky at the closing. All of a sudden, all these files showed up at our door, and we're like, perfect. But the key to the deal was the retail. It was a vacant 5,000 square foot space, 50 foot wide, at a time where, like, why would a retail take a chance? But if we said to ourselves, if we're going to take a chance on a vacant retail, it's on McDougal Street, like probably one of the highest traffic blocks in New York City, right next to NYU. We took a chance. Thankfully, we leased out the space within 6 months of putting it on the market at a slightly higher rent than what we projected. And then, yeah, we executed our business plan. We renovated probably 50 apartments out of like 65 in a span of 6 months. We moved very quickly. We refinanced out of the building pretty quickly at a 3% rate. And our plan was, I didn't have family money in this deal. It was an institution that was behind me, so we weren't looking at this as a very long-term hold. But at the right time, if we could exit, we would exit. And not that this was the right year to exit, while rates are 7%. But somehow, I found the right buyer, which is also part of it. And I think that in a market like today, where there's very little transactional volume, the deals that I've noticed that are selling are the prime locations, mostly Manhattan. A building like this, we had a German buyer that came to me through a close friend of mine, David Ash, who said, one guy that's looking to just park $25 to $30 million of capital. I told David, bring him into my office to have a nice chat. It took about a week or so of coffees and this and that. We got comfortable with each other, and this is what he wanted. We convinced our lender, which wasn't easy, to let the buyer assume the loan of the low 3%. And I said to the lender, listen, it's a win-win. Either we're keeping the building for another few more years and we're paying her a 3% rate, or you gain a new client who's a billionaire, who's going to give you a lot of additional deposits, which, as you know, in today's age, banks need deposits, or they can go under. And we convinced the buyer to also pay a little fee on top. So the lender gained 2 clients. He kept us, got a new lender, a new buyer who's going to keep buying more deposits, and he paid us a nice number. Not going to lie, paid us a nice number. I was very happy with the number. That was our exit number from the start. And but I think it was a tribute to our team's effort in the renovations. It was a wild execution plan. I probably lost about a year of sleep with everything that went on with that, but that's the business.
You're probably a few years behind with your kids now too, so.
I try. I try as much as I can. We all try. You always need to make time for your kids, but I try. It's not easy, but we try.
Yeah. Huh. Well, that's definitely a nice exit. 70% LTV. Everyone can do the math, but that's a good exit. So congratulations on that. You were alluding before about why you like Manhattan in terms of it being a liquid market. I'm curious right now, like what your thoughts are on Manhattan in particular, but also just like the New York market in general. And really how you're thinking about attacking right now I look at as really 2024. The next year of business. How do you approach that, and what do you feel like is your telltale sign of like, all right, this deal is going to work in today's rate environment, or this is long-term hold. We can afford to wait this out.
So for one, what I've noticed is that Manhattan is much more liquid than Brooklyn. And while I focus also on prime Brooklyn, Manhattan are the properties that are selling in today's market. Some in Brooklyn, but it's more the local guys. But if you're looking for that out-of-the-box buyer, 1031, foreign, it's Manhattan. And it'll always be Manhattan forever. So in the tough times, Manhattan will always stand out. What I've noticed too in the last 1, 2, maybe even 3 years is that there's been a lot less velocity. Sellers are holding their buildings close to their vest. They don't want to agree with today's market pricing. Rates have gone up. They just don't understand. These are people that have owned the buildings for 20, 30, 40 years. They don't understand how the markets and the numbers work. They think that you're lowballing them by giving a certain number based on a rate, but that's just the way it is. So as far as 2024 goes, I think that there's been such a stalemate and such a built up amount of like tension that I think the roof is going to fly off, because I think there's going to be so many deals that are going to happen. I think a lot of loans are coming due. Lenders don't have patience anymore with borrowers who are trying to restructure their loans, and they've given them a few extra months. And I just think next year is going to be a flurry of deals. I think now if you can make any deals, God bless. It's not an easy market, but I do believe that next year sellers will get realistic with the actual pricing. And I think if you can make your numbers work, I would strike all day long, because eventually Manhattan will resort to the mean. Cap rates will compress. I remember when I was a broker in like 2013 or 2013 to 15, I was selling buildings, renovated buildings on 36th Street, right off of the highway, right off of the tunnel, like the worst location, for a 3.5 cap. I sold that for Icon. And I don't know if 3.5 cap is going to happen again, but maybe a 4 cap, maybe a 4.25 cap. So if your cap rates compress, I think you're golden.
Okay. Listen, I hope they do, because that's indicative of interest rates moving down.
Yes.
So the mortgage broker and me
I
definitely
just think it has to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. We like low rates. It's just reality. Okay. I want to be mindful of people's time, so I guess I always like to end off asking. We're at a Chabad event. Your family is very involved in the Jewish community. Married into a family very involved in the Upper East Side Jewish community, but your cousin obviously served our country. So thank you to him. But for you, what is your engagement like in the Jewish community, and kind of what drives you in your philanthropic giving, and what's your focus, do you find?
Yeah. This is not just a plug for Chabad. I genuinely love Chabad. I love what you do for the community. I mean it. That's probably where I support and donate most of my money, and I think it's so important that Chabad is around. They make every Jew feel at home, feel like a comfortable Jew, and like they belong. Whether you're a recent convert or you know nothing about it, or you're moving from Dallas to New York and you're just getting a better understanding, or you're a religious Jew but you need like a community or a home, Chabad they make you feel literally like your family. You're always welcome. And I just think that's so important in today's environment and in the world, where Jews, at the end of the day, like we're all blood, and in a way we are all mishpacha. But Chabad goes the extra length to really bring us together and make you appreciate and understand that. So I'm not just saying that because we're here. This is a Chabad event. I genuinely mean it, and I thank you, Rabbi, for all that you do for our community. I think it's tremendous.
Amen. You did buy your first building in Crown Heights, so clearly big Chabad guy. Big Chabad guy. Okay. I'd open it up for any questions. If anyone wants to ask a few, yeah, Mr.
I have a question. When it comes to syndicating, you have to answer to all the people who invest in your deal. How do you handle situations where maybe one or multiple of your investors kind of changes their mind, and maybe they're not feeling the same way they were when you initially pitched deal, maybe they want to back out, maybe things aren't going so great. You know, how do you deal with certain situations that arise so that?
And that's happened many times, especially early on in my career. And it's nerve-wracking and it's scary, and you think the world's gonna end because you have a closing coming up soon, and you're like, holy shit, I gotta plug this hole. You figure it out. Whether you tell the seller, hey, I need an extra month, maybe I'll release a little bit of deposit so you know, and then you just talk around and you push it. Maybe one of your other investors comes in, adds a little more capital to the deal, but when there's a will, there's a way, and that's when, you know, the tough get going, and you just have to believe and know that you're gonna do it. So Dave, if you need a little extra time, you're gonna figure it out.
I was curious, the signature portfolio that's coming out,
Mhm.
kind of like your thoughts on, you know, what sort of strategies, is a multi in that basket, where you see that shaking out?
You talk about the portfolio that Spees is representing?
Yeah.
So I would say the brunt of it is rent stabilized, which is why it's, you know, it's available, and my whole take is on the rent stabilization. I don't focus on rent stabilization because there's no real business plan with it. The laws keep changing, they're not getting better, they're getting worse. So you need to really buy these buildings at such a significantly high cap rate that it leaves you cushion, because your rents are not going up, but I can assure you your expenses are going up significantly every day. And whatever you see on the setup is total BS. There's always maintenance issues, there's, you know, your taxes are going up, your insurance is going up, your oil is going up. I mean, we're dealing with a highly inflationary market right now where everything is going up except for your rents and rent stabilized buildings. So I think whoever's buying those buildings will probably buy them right and has the right long-term capital approach. I think the only business plan, frankly, is they're just praying that the Supreme Court's gonna reverse the laws. And if it does, and I actually do think that there's a real possibility of it, because I truly believe it was unconstitutional when the laws changed in 2019. I think they'll strike right and they'll do well, but I'm not banking on that. I'm focused more on what I know, what I can control, and that's really free market assets. Ideally some value add, and when I say free market, even that's a whole asterisk, because, you know, I've turned away a few deals like recently. I had a $35 million deal in the East Village, a 100-foot wide deal that I was so excited to buy. Great numbers, it was 6 cap going in with upside, 600 a foot, and I was told the paperwork was perfect. Sure enough, we dig in right before we sign the contract, and the seller never filed permits on any of the free market, or very few of the free market units that were renovated. So there's zero proof that any of these units were renovated, in which case if any tenant made a claim about why is my apartment free market, should rent stabilized, I would have zero backup to the courts to say, hey, well, you know, the previous owner did the work, look at the pictures, but it's not recorded anywhere. So unfortunately, you have to walk away from that. So paperwork is everything in today's market. And that's also part of the reason why there's very little velocity going on in this market, because paperwork is everything. No one wants to touch stabilized, and on the free market deals, it needs to be bulletproof in order for you to buy it. Or the seller needs to take a massive discount in the case that you need to protect yourself from overcharge exposure for a tenant. And that's a tough act from a seller to say, hey, I'm gonna take a few $100,000 less off the price because this tenant might be rent stabilized and he might overcharge, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, it's definitely tough right now, not gonna lie. But there are deals out there are opportunities out there. I do wanna be encouraging everybody. I do have a few contracts out that hopefully we're gonna sign very soon. It takes a while, but if you stick with it and you stick with the right seller profile, and something I wanna share with everybody, and this is like me throwing my brokerage hat on, it's not also about working harder, it's about working smarter. And when I say working smarter, it's who are the parties that you're dealing with, and hopefully the broker is capable, but you have to understand at the end of the day, who is the seller, why are they selling, and if they say it's just because of the price, I'm not that type of a buyer. But if somebody has a real reason behind it, whether they're moving, retirement, there's a divorce, it's an estate, and there's a real reason behind why they're selling it, I know that they're gonna meet the market, and I'm willing to spend my time on an asset and a seller like that and focus my energy on that rather than spending or sending 20 LOIs out on properties. I like to hone in on real sellers with capable brokers where I believe that there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
Wow.
Filippo.
Quick question. Even in the fair market units, right, the laws for, you have a tenant doesn't want to pay, getting them out could take a very long time. How do you think about that when you're underwriting? How do you deal with that from a management perspective? How do you screen tenants? You know, your asset is, your unit is only your unit until someone doesn't want to pay, and then what?
Right, so good question. If you have the wrong tenant, free market tenant, crazy, they could play the game. And when I say play the game, it's, you know, try to evict me, the courts are slow, and they could just drag you out for a year, 2 years, especially if your business plan is you want to renovate that apartment, bring it up to market rent. They could drag you out, and they know that. And not gonna lie, that's happened a couple of times and very recently. And it's absolutely insane when a unit is statutorily free market. But welcome to New York, there's a lot of extortionists out there. And what this particular tenant I'm talking about is not a tenant that I put into the building, but a tenant that I inherited. So when you say, how do you screen, what I found out was this tenant was an attorney after that, you know? So a lot of times attorneys are the more difficult tenants to deal with because they have no problem playing the game and representing themselves, and they're more difficult to deal with. So, you know, it's, does it happen a lot? No. Is it part of the game? Yes. But hopefully you have a little extra cushion when you buy a building to deal with this person. And, you know, one thing I've learned is if there's a buyout on the table where you know you're dealing with a tenant who will fight you or will try to screw with you, like this tenant started calling a few of my other buildings and saying, you know, oh, this person has violations here, blah, 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 like just to get my attention so that I can, you know, pay him more and more money. And I think we have an early window to deal with a tenant who you know is a troublemaker, try to strike fast. And that's like the biggest lesson I've learned so far with these problem tenants. That's New York.
All right.
One more right here.
Okay, all right.
I'm happy to answer.
Okay,
Keep going.
all right. Well, yeah, I'll say let's make this the last question, and you know, if anyone needs to leave, and they can do so, and you know, you could stay around if you want for a
Yeah,
little bit
I'm
longer.
happy. I'm
We got some more sushi, I think. There's still some bar left. Yeah.
What's one of like the biggest mistakes you've ever made, and what lessons did you learn from that?
One of the biggest mistakes I made.
Man, a few mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, I drank a little too much water before this event.
That's what it was, the water.
But you know, the second half coming out strong. Let's we'll close it out. I would say, I might actually tack on to what Phil just asked me, which is sometimes you want to fight certain tenants that you know are going to be problems, and because you know they have no claim whatsoever. And you're saying, why am I going to give this person $1 when they have no right to stay overtime, or, you know, and they're claiming they're stabilized even though there's zero proof whatsoever, like it's statutorily free market. I've had a couple of incidents where I wish that I settled or made a deal earlier, and even though it pained me and pains me to give anyone like that money where they're not due, it would have saved me so much agony and time, and it cost me a lot of extra dollars, not just with legal fees, but just with everything. And time is not your friend, time is your enemy when you have a loan and you have a business plan. And I had a close family friend of mine, when I bought a building, I had like during COVID, I had a building downtown. There was a class action lawsuit with a few tenants that knew that the courts were closed during COVID. So I said, oh, let's band together and let's not pay this owner money, and he can't get us out, he can't do anything. And I probably had a small window where I could have said to them, hey, just take this money and run and call it a day. And I was like, in a way, screw these people, they have no right to do that. It's been ongoing for 3 years, paying legal fees, attorney fees, doing this, and it's just agony. So that's probably, that comes to mind right now, that's probably the biggest mistake, is it might pain you sometimes to do things that you don't want to do, but sometimes you have to bite in the bullet because you're dealing with New York tenants who they know the law, they know what's going on, and the court is not your friend, the court is a tenant's friend.
All right. Okay, thank you, everyone. Shana Tova.
Was there some positivity in there? Like,
I think 2024
Yeah.
is going to be a good year. This next Jewish New Year, God willing, will be a good year for everyone.
God willing, yeah.
And let me just I'll give you your shofar over here, top shelf. Only top shelf here. This is a gift from CYP. Yeah, if you can blow that thing, you can.
I don't know. I don't know why I just put myself on the spot.
Oh yeah.
Hold on.
Oh yeah.
Not bad.
Wow.
Still
Good
got it.
job. That was that's good. Thank you.
All right, you're the man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Sean.
everybody, for coming.
And we're not
Thank
getting
you,
kicked
Chabad.
out, so please,
Shofar lessons in the back.